women use mind games. They apply mental games to a man's existence depending on who she thinks you are. Now, this is going to be a deeper insight depending on how I'm going to also dissect the sections so that it can apply to your logistics and on your physiological understanding of this information, and how it will deliver an insight that makes sense to what is happening right now in your life with the lady that you are dating. At first, let's understand how games are applied to men's existence and how your response to specific games, that is the women's mental games, reinforces either her games or it disqualifies how she perceives you, and maybe she will even walk away, or it gives her an insight that she needs to use a better game. She needs to get better in her game because she's not getting the result that she will get if she could have maybe applied a different game. Now, these games are applied depending on how she was raised, how she has dated in her past relationship, and how she is perceiving reality as at now. That is the events that are happening and how she perceives those events depending on how she was raised. Because if there were some unmet needs and there were uncertainty and she had to cope in a certain way, she will test you so that you can deliver predictability, because that confirms security. If she has an insecurity and maybe she relies on an emotional arousal as the basic foundation of that relationship, then this is a confirmation that she will use a game to test your emotional stability, because she's not willing to be responsible for your emotional baggage, but she wants you again to arouse her emotionally. But at the same time, you can be a potential partner. You can be a guy who can just arouse her emotionally. Now, if she goes ahead, okay, and understands that emotional arousal as something that she will pick for hypergamy to be fulfilled, then this is a confirmation that she is the one lady who will end up picking you under the influence of emotional arousal, and that is the foundation of that relationship. Because at the end of the day, she knows that for her to feel attracted to you, for her to see the security and the predictability in that marriage and relationship, she needs to get an emotional fulfillment, because that is what communicates love or safety. And it might actually be unhealthy, but because she perceives it as healthy, now she will consistently seek, okay, and crave for it, because that is what fulfills what she perceives is a relationship and marriage. Now, let's now roll back and go back to understand where I came from and what I have been trying to communicate to you, gentlemen. Let's now dive deep. At first, when a woman is testing you using a mental checklist, if you can check every box, she's not testing your mental fortitude alone. She's not only testing you on that alone, okay? She is actually testing your emotional investment, and that is the secondary emotional investment. Now, at first, when you go in a hotel and then you order certain food, and then maybe she tells you that is a weird combination, and then you react, an instant reaction is a primary emotional investment. And a primary emotional investment isn't the determinant factor of her screening and her test, because it's how the body will respond to a specific subtle cue or a character or a behavior from any other human being. So it's hard for her to even screen that primary emotional reaction, because maybe it's a sensation that will happen in your body, and you won't react to that sensation instantly until you perceive it in a certain way. Now, perceiving it in a certain way, that removes or it reinforces the primary emotional investment to a secondary emotional investment, which is the prolonged emotional investment depending on how we perceive the outside events. This is a confirmation that if we act in a certain way, after we get a specific reaction from someone, or after we react instantly from someone's action, from Hannah's action, maybe you get anxious. An instant anxious gives you a sensation physically in your internal operating system, that is the body, emotionally. But at the same time, it's transforming the emotional investment on a primary level to a secondary level. Now, from a primary level, that is to Hannah, she's not aware of that, but the body is aware. That is your body, and it's only aware at the instant level, which is reacting to a specific event instantly, and that is just maybe an emotional arousal, okay, of the body, an instant trigger of the body, and it might feel fear, anxious, or maybe a sensation in a physical state that will happen instantly. Now, at that very moment when it happens instantly, the body will feel a sensation, or maybe you will sweat, or maybe there will be tension. That is the muscle tension. And that is the primary emotional reaction to a specific event, but the body hasn't really categorized it in a certain way. All it knows is just reacting to something it sees as a threat, or it sees as maybe unpredictable, or maybe it triggers a specific emotional arousal in the internal operating system. Now, at this very moment now, she can't really screen you on a primary emotional state because you haven't perceived the primary emotional state to a secondary one. You haven't reinforced that, and your body, how you see the world, that is the outside events, that is what will reinforce your perception. Okay, for example, we are having a conversation, and then I use a mental test, I use a mental game, because I am gauging your emotional investment and how strong you are. Why? To me, maybe that is the number one checklist of a man I will pick if I want to have a serious, stable relationship with him. Now, at this very moment when I am dating you, Isaac, when I use a mental game, I am not measuring your primary emotional investment. I am measuring your secondary emotional investment, because the secondary emotional investment, it is what gives out your emotional investment and how you perceive and see the world on a physical world and your perception. Now, that way I can easily predict you. Because here's the thing, Isaac, when I am having a conversation with you, okay, at this very moment, I do not know that I am testing you, but how you respond to my games and to my tests that I am applying subconsciously, that will give me an insight to categorize and perceive you on a certain way. So if I am measuring your emotional investment, or if you are committed and I can rely on you and you are communicating security, how you will react to my subtle games, maybe I will be provoking you, expecting a specific reaction. The specific reaction is your response on a subtle and nuanced way, and not your internal physical sensation. Because I might not be aware of the internal physical sensation, even when I am aware and I can see the tension in your hand and the sweat in your hands. I am never aware of your perception of your sweat and the tensions in your body. If you understand as the physical sensation that is happening in my internal operating system, and it's just a reaction to an unpredictable event, or it's just a trigger to what I am not used to or to my past experiences, now that gives you power and it gives you an upper hand. Now it's hard for me to test it because your perception doesn't give me a result of what I expect from you, because now I can't measure your emotional investment and your level of commitment to this relationship. Now, this is a confirmation that I need to please you more, that I need to work hard for you, that I need to invest. At that very moment, I am also gauging how I can use better games and better mental game so that you can react to what I perceive as either you are entirely invested, you are committed fully, or maybe I need to still please you. And the more I invest in you energetically as Hannah, the more I am working hard for you. The more I need to please you, the more I am building the relationship, the more I want it to work, the more I will care,